I'm at the range today getting some practice in, and I want to do a video on aiming a traditional bow. Aiming a traditional bow is something that people are starting to be more interested in. When I started traditional archery about 15 years ago, instinctive was really the only way that was taught to shoot a traditional bow. The old, just like throwing a baseball, you look where you want to go, you draw back, you anchor, execute a good shot, and the arrow should go where you're looking. Which, it works, absolutely. Your subconscious mind starts to learn the trajectory of that bow. But as I started shooting and hunting with my traditional bows, I felt like I was inconsistent, especially in pressure situations, and I wanted a more concrete way to aim my bow. And that's when I started to learn about gap shooting. And there's a lot of good videos on gap shooting out there. Jimmy Blackman has a bunch. And gap shooting is basically aiming with the point of your arrow. Similar to Kentucky windage with a rifle. You have the point of your arrow and you'll hold it below the target somewhere, and so you'll see the arrow in your peripheral vision, and you'll know at 20 yards I have to hold the point of my arrow 24 inches below the target, and the arrow will go right into the kill zone. That's the basic idea of gap shooting. And when I started to gap shoot, my accuracy improved, my consistency improved, I started killing more animals, stopped missing high and low, and that was, a huge breakthrough for me in shooting a traditional bow. It really revived my interest in shooting a trad bow. So gap shooting, you have to take some special considerations in setting up your bow. So the first thing is you need to shoot 3 fingers under the arrow, and then some people will shoot index finger corner of the mouth, middle finger corner of the mouth, and some people can even anchor up higher. I choose to go middle finger corner of the mouth. That gives me a pretty high anchor point, gets the arrow pretty close up to my eye, and that really helps reduce my gaps, especially at the closer distances that I hunt whitetails at. And we'll talk more about shrinking your gaps to make them more manageable and to give you better accuracy at the closer distances. So 3 under is really the only way to go for gap shooting, unless if you're shooting split finger, you'd have to anchor up really, really high to get the same sight picture. So get a bow, set up for 3 fingers under. Usually bowers will tiller it even. If you have a bow that's already tillered for split, what you can do is you can just raise that knocking point up a little bit higher than you normally would, about a 1/4 inch or so. So to start off by gap shooting, just take your bow out to the range, and what you do is start at about 10 yards. So what you'll do is at 10 yards, put the point of your arrow right on the dot, execute a good shot, and then see how high that arrow hits above the dot at 10 yards. Measure that, and that will give you the gap that you have at 10 yards. So if your arrow at 10 yards hits 15 inches above the target, at 10 yards you need to aim 15 inches below the target for arrows to land in the middle. And then you'll just progress back all the way until when you have your point right on the target, the arrows go into there. And that's the basic idea of finding your gaps. Once you do that, you can kind of play around with closing one eye completely, kind of half close your left eye, or keep both eyes open. I choose to keep both eyes open It's just, it'll boil down to personal preference. And the other thing to think about is whether you want the target crisp and clear or you want the point of your arrow crisp and clear, because which one you choose to focus on will also impact your gaps. I find that keeping the target clear and the point blurry gives me a shorter gap and helps me just relax more, and I can execute a better shot. Some people can really aim really well and still execute a good shot. I need to take a little bit more relaxed approach to my aiming. So I look at the target, the point of my arrow is fuzzy, and I just place it, about where it's supposed to be. I'm looking into the kill zone, and then boom. So it's kind of like a crossover between gap shooting and instinctive shooting. So when you're setting up your bow, and let's say at 20 yards you're having trouble because your gaps are huge. You're aiming into the dirt at 20 yards if you're shooting at a 3D deer target. What you can do is you can either raise your anchor point up, that'll reduce your gap. You can bring your knocking point up also. You can take your knocking point up. I've brought knocking points up, an inch above 90 degrees, and everything still worked fine. My broadhead shot fine. My bear shafts hit 2 feet below the target, but my bear shafts, my broadhead shot great, so that's all that really mattered. So raising your knocking point is an excellent option. The other thing is to shoot a longer arrow. I don't even cut my arrows anymore. I probably have a good 2 inches hanging out the end of my arrow at full draw, and a longer arrow gives you more to aim with, and that'll shrink your gap also. The third option is to use a fixed crawl, and a fixed crawl is something I really like for hunting. What that is, it's similar to string walking, where you'll knock the arrow just like normal, and then you'll actually grip the string below the point where you have the arrow knocked. And what I do is I'll tie on a knocking point below there, so in the dark or when I'm hunting, I can just feel that knocking point, bump my tab up right against it, and I'm good to go. This knocking point is about 3/8 of an inch below my bottom knocking point. And with this setup here, what that gives me is at 20 yards, I can put the tip of my arrow right at the belly line of a deer, and at 30 yards, I'm right point on. So it makes for a really accurate hunting setup for close range, inside of 30 yards, which is traditional archery. That's what we're looking for. So fixed crawl is an excellent option for reducing your gaps. If you have any questions about gap shooting, reducing your gaps, or anything like that, feel free to drop me a comment or send me an email. Always glad to help. Hope this video will help some of you guys out there this fall harvest some more deer and be more accurate at the 3D range. Take care. So I just had a few quick afterthoughts on aiming. So the tendency for a lot of people when maybe they haven't aimed before and they just start aiming is they try to over aim, and that can cause a lot of problems. So when you're aiming, stay relaxed. Don't focus too hard on aiming. you have to still execute a good shot. Keep your focus on your execution and just let the aiming happen. Too often people, they'll start aiming and they'll tense up, and that's how serious problems happen, mental blocks and things like that. So stay relaxed when you're aiming, and it takes some time to really get used to it, and just like all new things, you have to really stick to it for a little while before you give up on it. So stay relaxed, stick with it, and one quick thing that might also help you is you don't have to shoot, your bow vertical. You can cant your bow. It helps me a lot to cant. Brings the arrow more directly in line with my eye, which is also a really important thing. If the arrow is sitting at an angle to your eye, your left and right will be not perfectly in line with where you want to hit. So you want the arrow right in line with your eye, so you can just place it perfectly in line where you want the arrow to go.